In those days, the Crest was in service to Steward Captain Auxilia of the Drift. From the outside, the life of a mercenary company must seem simple. Take a contract, fulfill the contract, get paid. And from the outside, yes, that is incredibly simple. But unfortunately, the truth of our way of life rarely matches that perception. After the near disaster in Larsha, Captain Netheridge brought us to Heartvale to lick our wounds. The Crest has passed through Heartvale before, but there is little to be found in the annals about that time, so I had few words of wisdom for the captain then. Now I would tell him to stay away. The vipers in the grass have already begun to slither toward us, and there is little we can do but prepare. Iron Gull thinks one of the new recruits can help us learn more about those vipers, but the lieutenant disagrees. I will reserve judgment. For now, his task is clear. Discover who sent that artifact on the drift ship on Danya, and why. He begins his inquiry with the merchant family, Vidala. Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures. As always, I'm your game master and solo player, Steve Morrison. On this week's episode, Benn looks for an old friend and asks too many questions in the process. Find out what happens on episode 4, Questionable Decisions. Benn, having received his task from Iron Gull, makes his way out of the Bloody Shield and into the early morning streets of the Grasp. He heads towards the Scales and is searching for a contact to talk to about the Vidala family. As he's walking, the noises of the city begin to fill his ears, and he, having been back now for 3 months, is taken by the bustle of the city, and he takes a moment, I think, to enjoy it, as he's been away for so long. Now, his first task on this mission from Iron Gull, and in fact, before we even get into that, we should start by doing the patron roll, as he has received a mission from his patron. So this is the start of the mission, and so I am going to roll plus steady, which is +2, and we're going to see what happens as we find out how Iron Gull views Benn through this task. So 7 plus 2 steady is going to be a 9, and on a 7 to 9, your patron is generally pleased with some reservations. The patron holds 1 for the session. In this case, we'll say the mission. They may spend it to call on you to do something, and you must make a refuse an obligation, duty, or debt roll if you refuse. If you refuse your patron's request, it counts as 1 disobedience. All right, so Iron Gull, again, much like the first mission, has 1 hold over Benn. The other thing that we're going to do here at the start of our mission is we are going to go ahead and highlight 2 stats. So again, the stats are steady, fierce, wily, sly, and arcane. And when we highlight those, the first time we make a move using one of those highlighted stats in each scene, we get to mark an advancement. So I am going to go ahead and mark Sly as one of them, and I'm going to mark steady as the other one. So those are my 2 highlighted stats. And then the last thing we can do before we jump in is we're going to pick an entanglement. Now, as the Black Hood, which is the playbook that I'm using for SCUP, the entanglements that I can pick from are steal something valuable or important from someone powerful, spread rumors about the actions you take as the Black Hood to grow your legend, or murder an enemy to better your own situation. So I think I'm going to leave it as the last one that I had, which is steal something valuable or important from someone powerful. And I definitely think that information could very well be the thing that Benn steals from the Vidala family or from whoever in order to gain some leverage here. So we have our entanglement picked out. We've highlighted 2 stats. We've rolled our patron roll. And now as Benn is walking down the street of Heartvale, away from the grasp, towards the scales, he is going to attempt to find a contact to ask about the Vidala family. And this is going to be our scene setup. So I'm going to roll my d10 and compare it against our chaos factor of 5. Here we go. A 6. So that is going to be above the chaos factor, which means the scene plays out as expected. So what Benn knows about the Vidala family is that they are a mercantile family, that they are merchants in the city of Heartvale. And I think as part of knowing that, he also knows that they probably have a stall, or it's probably more than a stall, because it sounds like they're a relatively powerful family in the city. They probably have a shop. So let's ask the fate chart just to make sure we'll get a relative sense of how powerful they are based on this fate chart roll. So are the Vidala family incredibly wealthy and powerful in the city? I'm going to set it at 50-50, and I'm going to ask the fate chart. And I've got 81. 81 is no. They are not an incredibly powerful and wealthy family. So because I didn't get an exceptional no, I'm not going to say that they're a really poor, sort of lower ranking merchant family. I'm going to say they're firmly in the middle. So they're not one of the wealthiest and most powerful merchant families in Heartvale, but they're also not scraping the earth for every little coin that they can in order to survive. So I think they have a small shop close to the Red Steps, and the Red Steps are this basically massive plateau in this marketplace where these steps, which are painted red, ascend up to this platform where all of these shops and stalls are located. And it is one of the prime locations for buying and selling in Heartvale. If you're a who's who of merchants, you're going to try and get a stall, or if you're even more fortunate and powerful, get a shop on the Red Steps. If you are looking to buy something, you're going to go to the Red Steps because that is most likely where you're going to find it. So Benn is headed towards the Red Steps, and I'd say it's probably close to, mid-morning at this point as he is approaching the Red Steps. And there is already a bustle of activity in the area. And this is somewhere in mid to late summer. So it's already starting to get hot here. And Benn is walking along. He is looking around. And I think he's probably looking for somebody that he knows, because I think that's where he would start. He would start with someone that he is familiar with and see if they have any information on the Vidala family. So does Benn find someone that he knows here at the Red Steps? Probably a merchant or, some sort of shopkeeper or something. I think it is likely, considering he was born in the city and raised in the city, and yes, he's been gone for a while, but I think even during his 3 years of service, that doesn't necessarily mean that he was away from the city all of those 3 years. So I think he has been back to the city. He probably has friends who are merchants or merchants' children, and I think it is likely that he is going to find someone that he knows at the Red Steps to ask them about the Vidala family. So we are going to roll our d10s. 44, and I said likely, and that is a yes. So he finds someone there at the Red Steps who he can talk to. So let's go over here and let's roll up a character. This is the first episode where I am using some random tables from the game Maze Rats. And Maze Rats is another sort of indie RPG, and it's a super cool, simple game. I'm not using the game for its game system, but I am using some of the really cool and simple tables in there to roll up NPCs and all these things. So I'm going to roll, in this case, a d6 on the civilized NPC table, and that's going to give me what this person's profession is that Benn finds. So I rolled a 1, and they are a brewer. All right, so this brewer is, are they male or female or unknown? I'm going to roll a d6 again. 1 to 2 will be female. 3 to 4 is male. 5 to 6 is non-binary. 3, so a male. All right, so this male, let's go ahead and roll up a name for them as well. We've got a 3, which is Merrick. So Merrick the brewer is, I think he doesn't have a shop. He's got a stall, and he comes here to sell beer to tavern owners and the like. So I think he has a few small casks, which he has like essentially samples, and he's passing out samples to people. And he is standing there at his stall. He is calling out to people and is like, "Oh, come try the best beer in Hartvale," and gesturing as people are walking by. And as Benn walks up, I think he stops and he looks at Benn and he goes, "Everybody out of the way!" And he kind of comes out from behind the stall, and his arms are spread wide, and he says, Cass, my old friend, come here, come get a hug." And he steps forward and embraces Benn and kind of squeezes the breath out of him. And as he does so, Benn kind of, "Merrick, hello, it's so good to see you again. First of all, I'm not going by my old name anymore." And Merrick looks at him and says, "What? What do you mean?" And Benn says, "I'm going by Ben Winestone now." I don't understand, but all right, if that's what you prefer to be called. Ben, it's great to see you. I'm so surprised. I didn't think you were back. I just returned a few months ago, and I've been busy. I joined the Crest, a mercenary company. And Merrick sort of like rocks back a little bit and says, "A mercenary company? That's strange. I didn't think you were the sort." And Benn sort of smiles a little bit and says, "I didn't either, but the opportunity presented itself and I couldn't say no. But how are you, my old friend?" And Merrick says, I'm well. I'm selling beer, making beer. It's the life for me. And Ben looks around and sees that there are a few people who were paying attention to them and kind of watching them. And he says, would it be possible to speak later? I would like to ask you some questions, but I don't want to interrupt you while you are doing your business here. Can I stop by the brewery later and catch up with you? Of course you can. Of course you can, my old friend. I would be happy to see you again. Come on by this afternoon. I'll get you a fresh pint, and we'll talk all about your adventures. Merrick sort of like claps Ben on the shoulder and steps back and says, I will try to remember to call you by this new name. What'd you say it was again? Ben Winestone. Right, Ben. A good name. It sounds familiar to me. I'll think of it some other time. I will see you later this afternoon, my friend. And Ben nods and says, it's always good to see you, Merrick. He is going to turn and walk away. And as he does so, I think he's going to spend a little bit of time walking around the red steps and just listening and trying to pick up any information just nominally as he's going around. So I think as he does that, why don't we go ahead and ask the fate chart? Let's see what he learns. Does Ben learn anything interesting during his time at the red steps? I'm going to say it is probably likely. I'm going to say it's likely. In fact, I'm going to say it's very likely that he learns something interesting because there's all sorts of gossip and conversation going on around him, and he just sort of blends in a little bit and stays and listens. So very likely, chaos rank of 5. 65 on the dice is a yes. Yes, he does learn something interesting. What is it that he learns? Let's go ahead and roll on action and subject and see what we discover. 25 is dominate. And 22, energy. Dominate energy. Interesting. So I think that what he discovers through that is that there is a bit of a power struggle going on amongst a couple of the merchant families in and around the Red Steps. And what he learns is that a couple of the more wealthy merchant families in the area have started to have a spate of bad luck. And they are beginning to, I think, grow concerned that there is someone sabotaging them. And as this trouble is happening, the Vidala family has stepped in on a couple of those business ventures, and their star is beginning to rise. And there are a few whispers that there's most likely something that the Vidala are doing that is leading to these circumstances. But for a lot of these families, they are really circumstantial events. Basically, like a run of bad luck seems to be striking these merchant families, and the Vidala, for whatever reason, don't seem to be affected, and they are capitalizing on the opportunities that these other families are missing out on because of this bad luck. And I think that is all he needs as he spends the next few hours sort of like listening and hearing these things. And we are going to go ahead and end the scene there. And we're going to drop the chaos factor down to 4. And as we go into our next scene, and the next scene setup is going to be visit Merrick's brewery. And we're going to add Merrick to the list of characters right now. And I think we didn't really gain any progress on any of those threads. So as we are going into this next scene, we can go ahead and roll our d10 to see if there's any sort of change to the scene setup. And I rolled a 1, which is going to change the scene. So this is an odd number, so it's going to be an altered scene, which means it's the next logical scene idea. So the next logical scene idea is that the scene happens outside of Merrick's brewery. So something happens on the way to Merrick's brewery. Let's roll on the event focus table and see if that gives us a clue as to what this might be. 63 is going to be PC negative. Okay, well, that's good to know. And let's roll on action and theme to see what that negative is for our PC. 67 is going to be open, and the subject is 41, which is advice. Open advice. Okay, so here is how this scene plays out. So he is on the way to Merrick's brewery. And I think as Benn is making his way towards the brewery, and as he does so, I think he gets a little bit of a tingle on the back of his neck that he has learned to listen to. He's learned to listen to that little whisper in the back of his head that says, "You're being watched." And he begins to look around to see if he can find who is watching him. And as he looks around, I think these two larger gentlemen in sort of nondescript work clothing approach, and Ben sort of steps off to the side of the street and I think puts his back to a building, just like a wall. And he rests his hand on the short sword under his cloak. He doesn't draw it. He doesn't show any sort of threatening nature, but he definitely gets the sense that these two are looking for him. And when they realize that he has noticed them, I think they don't stop. They don't run off. They just continue approaching him. And Ben looks at the two of them and says, "Can I help you, gentlemen?" And one of them says, "You were at the Red Steps this morning." And Ben shrugs and says, "A lot of people were at the Red Steps this morning." The man says, "You were asking questions. Questions that you are better off not asking. We would kindly suggest that you stop asking questions and go find something else to be interested in." Ben says, "And if I refuse?" The two look at each other and kind of look around the streets. And there are a couple of City Watch who are walking by. They haven't really seemed to take any notice at this point. And the one sort of lowers his voice a little bit and says, "Look, we don't want to hurt you, but if you keep asking questions, we'll have to." Ben is going to look at the two of them and almost sneer and say, "Are you suggesting you could hurt me?" The two return his look and they definitely scowl a little bit. And he says, the one who's been speaking says, yeah, I think we could." Ben is going to look at them and say, "Do you know who I am?" They shrug and say, "No, should we?" At that point, Ben sort of flips the little flap on his cloak and reveals the crest medallion, which is a laurel wreath surrounding a talon with a crest over the top of it. And he says, "I am a member of the crest. You would be careful threatening one of our number. So I'm going to do you know who I am, which is an honor move. I'm going to spend 1 honor, and it's going to give me +1 on my next threaten with force or persuade with leverage. So I am going to then immediately roll into persuading with leverage. When you try to convince someone to do or say something for you by using something you have against them or offering to give them what they want, roll plus wily. Or I'm going to use threaten with force. When you intimidate a person with the threat of violence, roll plus fierce. Well, I think in this case, Benn is using the threat of force, the threat of violence, to intimidate. So I'm going to roll plus fierce, which is +1, and I get +1 because of my honor move that I used. So I'm rolling at +2 here. 5 plus 2 is going to be a 7. On a 7 to 9, you are unconvincing or they are not persuaded. Your target will choose 1. Freeze in fear, surprise, or confusion. Try to strike a bargain with you or talk their way out of it. Start looking for a way out and take if they can. Put something or someone between themselves and you. Laugh at you, challenge you, or attack you right then and there. So I think they look at Benn, they look at the crest symbol, and they say, your mercenary company doesn't scare us. You're playing with things beyond your power, friend. I suggest you let it go, and we won't have to escalate things. Benn says, and I suggest that you walk away before you get hurt. The two look at each other, look over at the City Watch, who at this point have sort of passed by and are a little bit up the street. And they look like they're going to turn and leave. But Benn is not fooled by this, as all of a sudden both of them charge at him and are going to try and basically grab him and drag him into the alleyway beside where this building is located. Now, Benn is no fool. He knows that if he draws his sword and starts spilling blood here on the streets, that it's going to make for a much more difficult conversation with the City Watch if they decide to intervene. So instead of drawing forth the short sword that he has, I think he is going to simply sort of drop into a lower stance, raise his hands, and he is ready to meet the two as they are charging at him. And to do this, we're going to roll to engage in combat. So when you attack someone with the intent to do harm, roll plus fierce. I think in this case, it's actually going to be a face duress. So here, he's not trying to harm them per se. He is trying to essentially escape without getting beaten. So in this case, he's going to face duress. We're going to roll steady. And this is the first time we're rolling steady, which is one of the highlighted stats in this scene. So I'm going to go ahead and mark an advancement point right now so I don't forget to do it later. And I'm going to roll 2d6 and add +2. Got a 7 plus 2 is 9. So on a 7 to 9, you have flinched, stalled, or hesitated. The MC will pick 1 or 2 of the following and tell you what it will look like if you take it. So you can achieve your goal, but it'll come at a price. You can achieve your goal, but only partially. You cannot achieve your goal, but can do something similar instead. So I think his goal is to essentially subdue these two thugs without getting hurt himself. So I think he can either achieve that goal and it comes at a price, which would probably be harm to him, or he can not achieve the goal, in which case this turns into, I think, him running away and trying to escape these guys. So I think you can achieve your goal, but only partially. I'm going to take the middle road here. I'm going to say he is able to stun one of them, but the other one is able to grab him and pick him up and slams him against the wall. I'm not going to take any harm here, but I think at this point he is sort of like grappled by this guy, and Benn is going to bring his hands down and try to like clap them on this guy's ears to stun him and to try and like get his way free of this. So I'm going to face duress once again. Again, plus steady is +2. It's going to be 9 plus 2 is 11, and that is a complete success. So you have achieved what you set out to do. So he brings his hands down on either side of this guy's ears, and the guy like stumbles back, reaches for his head as his ears are ringing. Benn drops back down to the ground and punches the guy in the solar plexus and knocks the wind out of him. He stumbles back, and the other guy who was a little bit stunned is like starting to come to, and Benn steps forward and drives his elbow into the guy's stomach and makes him double over, at which point Benn moves past the two of them and disappears into the crowd. So that is going to end that scene, and we are going to increase the chaos factor up to 5. And our next scene is, I'm going to say Benn arrives at the brewery. Once again, we're going to roll our D10 to see how this goes. 2, which is underneath our chaos factor of 5. And because it's an even, it's an interrupt. So we are going to find out what happened. This preempts the scene. So we're going to roll on our random event chart here and see what the event focus is. 73. PC positive this time. Interesting. Okay, so let's roll on action and subject to see what our PC positive thing is. 33. Stop, and 11. Stop emotions. So this is positive, and it is stop emotions. So I think Benn, after he has this interaction with the two, I think he is able to like stun them and get past them, but then they start pursuing him. And I think at that point, they are following him. He's kind of getting away from them, and I think he runs into Morrow in the street. And Morrow, the other Crest soldier that he spent time with the night before, playing cards, drinking, and just generally interacting, Morrow like runs into Benn and is like, "Ben, are you all right?" And Ben's like, "Morrow, good. Come with me," and is going to grab him by the arm and step into an alleyway. And with this alleyway, I think he's going to say, "There's not a lot of time to tell you, but I'm being followed by 2 thugs. I think they may be working for the people I'm trying to pursue here. And if you can help me set a trap for them, we may be able to question them and determine some new information." And Morrow says, "Sure, whatever you need, my friend." And they are going to set a trap for those 2 thugs. This is our interrupt. So they step into this alley, they make their way down, and I think they look around for some way to set a trap. So do they find some like crates or barrels next to a warehouse or something like that they can hide behind? I'm going to say it's 50-50. So chaos rank is 5, and here we go. 21, which is yes. Yes, they do. All right, so they find some crates to hide behind, and that's exactly what they do. They are going to tuck behind these crates and wait. They hear these 2 thugs huffing along, and they come into this alleyway, and Benn hears the one say, "I swore that he stepped in this way. Was there someone else with him?" the other person asks. And Benn and Morrow are going to hide and wait, and they are going to spring this trap. Now, I think Benn is going to use an ability. So once per session, this is a Black Hood ability. Once per session, when you attempt to silently abduct or kill an NPC who is reasonably within your ability to reach, roll plus steady. On a 10 plus, choose 2. On a 7 and 9, choose 1. So I'm going to roll plus steady. This is going to be 2d6. Here we go. 9 plus 2 is 11, so I get to choose 2. So my options here are, it is clean and quiet. No one sees or hears a thing. It goes exactly as planned. Your target is killed or abducted exactly as you want. You didn't leave anything behind, or you leave behind a calling card. All right, so I can choose 2. So I think it is going to be clean and quiet. So they step out, and I am going to say, because Morrow is with him, that he is able to knock out both of them. So it is clean and quiet, and it's going to go exactly as planned. So they are both knocked out, and it happens so quickly the two have no chance to react. And they are going to crumple to the ground as Benn and Morrow step out and club them over the back of the head with the pommels of their swords. And the two collapse down to the ground. Benn and Morrow drag them out of the sort of like alleyway view of the street, and they're going to tie them up. I think Benn is going to take a moment and, make sure that they are secured, and he's going to turn to Morrow and say, Morrow, are you on your way somewhere? Were you on an errand? And Morrow nods and says, yeah, I was. I can't believe I ran into you in the street. I'm on an errand for Iron Gull. And Benn says, then perhaps you should get back to that. Don't worry about me. Now that we've subdued them, I should be fine. And Morrow looks at the two thugs, looks back at Benn and says, are you sure? And Benn is going to nod and say, I am certain, yes, it'll be fine. Once Morrow leaves, Benn turns back and looks at the two. He is watching them as they are unconscious, and he, sets about gagging them both and arranges them in such a way that they won't be easily discovered. Then he slaps one of the two awake. He looks at them, and it's the one that originally spoke. And as the man comes to consciousness, he looks around and blinks a little bit. And he said, what happened? And Benn says, you followed the wrong man into the wrong alley, my friend. Unfortunately for you, you have failed in your mission. You and I are going to have a little conversation now. You're going to tell me everything you know about your employers, about what they want, and about what your part in it is. Now, I want to be clear here. I am very good at telling when someone is lying to me. You wouldn't lie to me, would you? And the man looks around looking for maybe help or some way out. Benn says, listen, we're in an alleyway. You know how things are in Heartvale. Surely someone will come along at some point. It could be soon. If you want to hold out for that, I understand. However, it could be hours. And let me tell you, you don't want to spend hours not answering my questions. Now please, tell me what I want to know. And once again, I think that Benn is threatening with force here. He is threatening to harm this thug if he doesn't answer these questions. So we are going to roll plus fierce and see what happens. 5 plus 1 is going to be a 6, which is a miss. So on a miss, I am going to have to make an MC move. And this is something that I planned for. So what I did is I basically took all of the MC moves, which the MC or Game Master in SCUP or any Powered by the Apocalypse game really usually only makes moves when the players roll a failure, the 6 or less on 2d6. So because I'm also the player and the MC, I created a little chart that I can roll on to determine what the move is. So I'm going to roll my percentile dice and see what the MC move would be that is going to come into effect with this miss. 81. Hint at an unwelcome future. Interesting. Okay, so Benn offers up this threat and tells the thug all these things that he's going to do if the thug does not answer. And the man, steely-eyed, looks up at Benn and says, I don't know who you think you are, but you can't stop what's coming. The future of Heartvale is not with some mercenary company. No, the future of Heartvale is much grander than that. If you think that I'm going to betray my employers because you threaten me with pain and death, well, let me tell you something. Pain is only what you make of it. Do your worst to me, mercenary. I don't fear pain or death. And then he's just going to spit on the ground at Benn's feet. Benn listens to this and is going to shrug and gag the man again and say, don't worry, I'm not going to kill you. That would betray my purpose here. No, I'm going to let you go. But I want you to understand something. The things that you and your employer are playing with, they're dangerous. And yes, I don't know the full extent of what they are yet. I may never know the full extent, but if what I've seen is any indication, they are going to try something very, very dangerous and something very foolish. Now, I suggest that you tell your employers that they should not continue on this path. They should walk away while they still can, because trust me when I say this. We will find them, and we will expose them. Benn turns and leaves the alleyway. Benn is still determined to try and make it to the brewery, so he is going to make his way in that direction, and I'm going to roll our next scene. The chaos factor has gone up to 6, and I'm going to roll my d10 to see where we're at. A 1, an altered scene. So I think this time it's the next logical scene. So I think he arrives at the brewery, but when he arrives there, he sees that Merrick hasn't arrived yet. Or maybe even that he has arrived, and because of being waylaid by these thugs on the way, Merrick had to run an errand or two. And so one of the staff, one of the servers there, has a message for Benn when Benn walks in, which is essentially from Merrick saying, I am sorry, my old friend. I had to run some deliveries. I will be back this evening. have a drink on me, essentially. Like, I'll be back in an hour, have a drink on me. And Benn is going to sit down at one of the tables and is going to have a pint of Merrick's delicious brew. I think it's something that he probably has missed in the time that he's been away from Heartvale. And during that time, let's roll on an event focus and see if something happens. 53, close a thread. Oh, interesting. This is our first one of these. So currently, we have 3 open threads. So I've got discover why the Vidala family tried to recruit a sailor from the Undania, learn more about the lieutenant, or the other thread is the theft of the antitoxin from the Undania. So I put that one in there because I thought that might be something that could come back around in the future. And I think we're going to close that thread, as I think while Benn is sitting there, the steward of the Undania walks in. And it's been a day. She's had some food and drink, and she seems much more healthy than she was when they found her. And so Steward Seta walks in, and I think Benn tenses a little bit. Just this reflexive tension as he sees her and wonders at the odds that she would be walking into this place at this time. And she looks around the room, and I think her eyes pass over Benn, and he gets the realization that she has no idea who he is, that she has no recollection of him from when they were on the Undania, and that she doesn't even acknowledge his presence as a Crest soldier. So I'm going to go ahead and close out that thread as Benn realizes that he doesn't really have to worry about her coming after him for stealing that antitoxin from underneath her bed, because she doesn't even know he exists. So he is going to take kind of a deep breath and sigh, and then he is going to sit back and enjoy the beer. I think an hour passes of Benn sitting and drinking. He's thinking about those 2 thugs pursuing him, and he is wondering how they found out about him so quickly and how they picked up his trail so quickly. He really only asked a handful of questions while he was at the Red Steps, and yet they seemed to know that he was searching for something about the Vidala family. And then Benn looks around, and the brewery is busy. There are patrons here. It's now mid-afternoon, and there are patrons from the docks, from the Red Steps, from all over. I think Merrick's Brewery is one of the sort of best known breweries in Heartvale. And he looks around and he starts to wonder if there isn't more going on than even he at first suspected. The fact that these merchants had all of these runs of bad luck, that the Vidala were able to step in and gain their business, gain advantage over those merchants. What if that wasn't luck? Benn has been around long enough to know luck and to know careful calculation. He looks at the mug before him, at the beer inside of it, and he wonders, have things changed more than he realized in Heartvale? What does he know about his friend Merrick? Could his friend be backed by the Vidala? Is that how those thugs knew to look for him? he didn't tell Merrick anything about that. He didn't ask Merrick at all. He just asked to talk to him. No, if it's not that, then it had to be the questions that he asked on the steps. And if even those simple questions triggered thugs following him, then the Vidala must be aware that the Crest are looking for them, are looking into their business. And if the Vidala are so well prepared, then there is more danger here than he realized. All of these things are running through his mind as he is waiting for Merrick to return. When a door opens and a young woman with bright red hair enters. Ben sees her, and there is something strikingly familiar about her, but he can't quite place it. She enters the brewery and she looks around, and immediately her eyes find Ben. He grows nervous as her attention is focused on him. And she approaches the table where he's sitting. Ben looks to either side, looking for the exits, knowing that if this is another attack against him, if this is another attempt to stop him from asking questions, they're not going to kindly ask him to stop this time. And he braces for an attack that could be coming at any moment. Instead, the young woman sits down. She looks across the table at Ben, and she says, "You're a Crest. Good. I've been sent to talk to you. We have information that could help you on your mission." Ben looks at her and says, "Who sent you? Who are you?" She smiles and says, "Oh, me? I'm just a shade." Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures, and thanks so much to Syrinscape for the lovely ambient sounds and music throughout the episode. If you enjoyed the show, please tell anyone and everyone in your life about it. And if you haven't already, please rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really does help others find me. If you want to interact with me, my handle on Instagram and Twitter is @ErrantSoloPod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.